I've recorded another lesson for you which follows on from the last one, all about the tar desert. This now moves on to desertification. Quite a few of you emailed some work back and said the video helped, so I thought I'd do another. So just let me know how it goes, how you get on, and remember to send either myself or Miss Madare your work, either on Teams or email, once you've had a go at that. So like I said, I'm going to focus on desertification today. From Miss one more. Last task of last lesson was this one. So for a hot desert environment that you have studied, to what extent does that environment provide both opportunities and challenges for development? Big well done for these following points. Lots of people were able to identify both challenges and opportunities that are available in a hot desert. Many of you use this scale that I've put on the screen now, to what extent, and many of you describe both opportunities and challenges that are available. To make it a little bit better, and you can have a glance back over your work from last lesson, it'd be really good if you could link the challenges and opportunities back to development. And from last lesson, I said development was the increase in wealth and quality of life in a place. So for example, you'd say this is a challenge for development because it negatively impacts the quality of life for residents, for example, and so on. And just another point to make it slightly better would be to make it more specific to the tar desert, so use key facts or figures. Okay, so moving on, all about desertification today. So by the end of this lesson, I want you to be able to describe the location of places that are vulnerable to desertification, to identify and explain the causes of desertification, and then to also describe some effects of that. So key word of the day obviously is desertification, and I've put a little definition up there for you now. So it's the process by which land becomes desert. It becomes really dry and degraded, lacking of any nutrients and fertility, and it's usually as a result of droughts, deforestation, or what we call inappropriate agriculture, so inappropriate farming methods that have led the land to become dry and degraded. Okay, so we're going to have a look at what areas are vulnerable to desertification. So here's a map that shows the red areas are already desert areas. The yellow areas are what you need to focus on in this task, so areas that are vulnerable to desertification, and then the green are invulnerable areas. So the task that I want you to do in a moment is to describe the distribution. Remember, distribution means the spread of areas that are vulnerable to desertification. And I've put a key checklist there to get the best possible answer in the form of some sentence starters. So start by saying, well, where are they found in the world? Can you see a particular trend or pattern? Can you identify countries that are vulnerable to desertification? And you need to use key terms. And I've put some there, so like Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, the equator, the tropics, and so on. So if you could pause it now and spend a few minutes having a go at describing the distribution of the yellow areas, the areas that are vulnerable to desertification. Okay, you should have had a chance to have a go. I've given an example answer here, so you can look back over yours and kind of mark yours and see if you were along the right lines. So areas vulnerable to desertification are found in areas north and south of the equator, but within the tropics. A pattern and trend I can see is that most countries vulnerable to desertification, they're unevenly distributed, as the far northern hemisphere has none. Countries that are vulnerable to desertification, and I've listed some off there: Australia, Northern African countries, Argentina, India, Eastern Europe, and Western USA. I would also add into your answer that you'll notice that all the yellow parts, the areas vulnerable to desertification, are next to the red parts. So it's this idea that the desert is almost spreading. Okay, moving on. So we're going to have a look at some causes of desertification now, and I've kept the definition on there if you need to keep referring back to it. So down the left-hand side, you'll see lots of different causes of desertification, and task I want you to do now is to explain one cause of desertification, and that'd be typically worth 2 marks. So I've given you an example here. Sorry, I've just picked the top one if you were going to pick that one. But one cause of desertification is deforestation. Cutting down trees causes the land to become infertile. Okay, you would get 1 mark from that, but it's an explain question. So to get the 2 marks, you'd need to go on to explain why that makes the land to become infertile. So as there are no roots to bind the soil and feed it water and nutrients, meaning it becomes very, that's meant to say become very dry, and it can erode away. So what I want you to do now is I want you to pause the video again, and I want you to have a go, pick one of those from the list, not deforestation, pick another one, or as many as you want, and have a go at explaining how that particular cause causes the land to become infertile and become desert-like. Okay, so we did this in the last lesson, a really good key skill of assessing and weighing up and making decision. And like I said last lesson, there's no right or wrong answer as long as you can justify what you read. So thinking about those list of causes, I want you to think about, well, what's the biggest cause of desertification in your opinion? So you have to just why the one you've picked and why you think that is the biggest cause. So if you could pause it now and have a go at saying what is the biggest cause. Okay, so we're going to bring it together and have a look at an exam question that could come up in this scenario of desertification. So an exam question, I picked a bit of a different one to last time. So discuss the view that desertification is caused by poor human land management, and it'd be typically worth 6 marks. So as always, we need to bug the question. So we underline the geography, so that's desertification, land management. We box the command word, which is discuss. Discuss means that you present your key points about different ideas, or it could be strengths and weaknesses of an idea. In this case, we're presenting key points about different ideas. So the idea that desertification is caused by poor human land management or something else. So the checklist for a top geographer answer, I want you to discuss why it is caused by poor human land management. So give examples such as deforestation or overgrazing of the land and how those cause desertification. And to make it even better, discuss why it isn't just caused by poor human land management. So for example, it could also be caused by natural factors like natural climate cycles. Before the lockdown, we were looking at climate change and how some of that is caused naturally due to solar output or the Milankovitch cycle. So have a think about what else could cause desertification. So if you want to pause it now and have a go. Okay, so I put an answer up there for you that you can have a look at this one, look back at yours. Are you on some similar lines? Can you pinch something from that answer? Or can you make it even better and send it across to myself or Miss Madare? I'll not read it out to you because you can pause it and read it in your own time, compare it to your answer, and so on. And moving on to the last little bit, our last objective is to describe the effects of desertification. So there's many effects of desertification, and when we're in geography, we look at all the different types of effects, so short-term, long-term, social, economic and environmental and so on. I've just picked 5 effects for us to focus on today. So there's a lack of vegetation cover for holding soil together and for grazing. There's increased soil erosion, crop failure leading to famine, so links to food security. There's fewer plant and animal species, and the land is unable to support people, so then they're forced to migrate. So there are 5 effects. So what I want you to do is do what I've done underneath. I've given an example. So your task is, in a moment, pause this slide, and I want you to create a chain of consequences of desertification. So I've given an example here. So I've started off with crop failure. If the crops fail, so that means that there's no yield of crops for that particular time, there's going to be a lack of food in the area. Because there's a lack of food in the area, that could lead to a famine, which is an extreme lack of food, which will increase the death rate. If there is a lack of food, they're going to have to prioritise their own food security. So any that they might usually sell on and export and get money for, they're unable to do that, which then lowers the GDP of that country or that place. That means they've then got a lack of money to spend on developing that country, which means the quality of life is reduced overall. So what I want you to do is pause the screen, pick one, or you could do all of them, and have a go at a chain of consequences like the example I've done below. And just to finish off, I want to say thank you for joining me again for our second loom lesson. And I've finished it off with a link to another video which I found, which I like, that covers the causes and the effects of desertification. Just a reminder, make sure you send your work either to myself or Miss Nadir on Teams or on